Prison escapes are both more common and less common than you think. While people walk out of minimum security facilities every single day, more sensational, movie-like escapes are extremely rare. Even more unusual are the cases where the same inmate managed to break out multiple times. A man named Richard Lee McNair did just that, earning a title as one of the most brilliant escape artists of all time. Born the son of a reserve police officer, McNair was once close to following his father's footsteps. As an extremely intelligent man with remarkable observation skills and the ability to read people, McNair, who studied criminal justice and served as a military police officer, could have had a successful career in law enforcement. But for reasons unknown, instead of using his skills for good, McNair ended up making a decision that put him on the other side of the law. From all different types of hobbies in the world, McNair chose robbery. It wasn't like he needed the money. As an airman, Richard Lee McNair was making more than enough to pay the bills. From several commercial robberies around the southeast part of Minot, North Dakota in late 1987, McNair brought home what can only be described as pocket money. No more than a few $100s at a time. It was the thrill he was seeking, not the loot. McNair simply loved the adrenaline rush from breaking into the buildings. But the thing is, he was also ready to do whatever it took to avoid getting caught, even if it meant taking a life. On the night of November 17, 1987, 28-year-old McNair headed to a grain elevator building located not far from Minot Air Force Base. He had been at the elevators before the way military trucks and had seen money being taken and placed in a small safe behind the counter. That little box was McNair's target as he broke into the building through a walk-in door at the base of one of the elevators. It was supposed to be a rather quick in and out operation, but everything changed when McNair was disturbed by the Farmers Union employee. 31-year-old Richard Keesman had very little time to register what he was witnessing as he walked into the office before the burglar pulled his .38 caliber and shot Keesman multiple times. Thinking he had killed the disturber, McNair exited the building, but didn't immediately flee the scene as he noticed an 18-wheeler that had just been parked outside the elevator. Inside, 47-year-old trucker Jerome Thies sat eating ice cream. Miraculously still alive after having his skull grazed by a bullet, Keesman called 911. 1 minute and 18 seconds into the call, 5 more shots were heard fired. 3 of them hit Thies in the head, killing him instantly. By the time authorities arrived, the shooter had vanished. Despite Keesman's description of the killer and an $18,000 reward, weeks passed without much progress in the case. No leads, no suspects. Who knows how long McNair could have evaded justice if it wasn't for his own sloppiness. In February 1988, stolen goods were found inside a storage unit whose lock had been removed because of an unpaid rent. As they checked the contract, Ward County Sheriff's detectives learned the unit belonged to a man named Richard Lee McNair. It was a shocking discovery. This man had helped the police to convict drug dealers that sold dope to military personnel, and now he was brought in as a murder suspect. But it was McNair's actions after his arrest that made him infamous, not his crimes. Richard Lee McNair was about to become an escape artist. It all started at the Minot Police Department, where McNair sat handcuffed to a chair. Once left alone, the 29-year-old managed to get a hold of a tube of lip balm in his pocket, which he then used to lubricate his hands to slip them free. And just like that, McNair made his first escape. But the freedom only lasted for a short while. McNair was quickly cornered into a 3-story building downtown and rearrested after a failed jump which injured McNair's back. Given 2 life sentences for murder and attempted murder, in addition to a 30-year sentence for burglary, McNair was sent to North Dakota State Penitentiary, but he had no intention of staying whatsoever. On October 9th, 1992, McNair and 2 other inmates pulled a stunt that can be compared to Andy Dufresne's escape in the Shawshank Redemption to some extent. The trio managed to crawl to freedom through a ventilation duct in an education room. While the 2 other men were soon captured, McNair remained at large. In the following months, he made some daring moves such as visiting his mother in Oklahoma and even sending Christmas cards to North Dakota warden Tim Scuzel. But McNair's luck did eventually run out when he decided to break into a Pontiac dealership in Grand Island, Nebraska. Although the business was closed on July 5th, 1993 because of the holiday, and an employee of the dealership happened to drive by. He immediately dialed 911 after noticing someone inside the building. Once he heard an officer requesting backup in his police scanner, McNair took off running and soon found himself surrounded. After 10 months on the lam, McNair was then returned to prison. Needless to say, the North Dakota State Penitentiary wasn't keen on housing McNair anymore, who was clearly too slippery to be kept behind its walls. So the 35-year-old was transferred to Minnesota Correctional Facility in Oak Park, a level 5 prison from where no one has ever managed to escape. After several years at the facility, McNair understood he wasn't going to be the one ruining that record. It simply wasn't possible to jump the incredible secure building. That, however, didn't mean there wasn't another way out. By participating in a sit-down strike, McNair got himself transferred back to North Dakota, but instead of staying at the facility he once escaped, McNair was then assigned to Florence High Penitentiary in Denver, Colorado, another high-security prison from where McNair knew he wouldn't be able to bust out. So using his charm, McNair convinced the authorities to transfer him again in 2005, this time to the United States Penitentiary, Pollock in Louisiana. There, McNair finally saw an opportunity he had been looking for. Escaping from a high-security federal prison requires a lot more than guts to even attempt such a stunt. You also need brains and a ton of luck. Thanks to his level of intelligence, observation skills, and military training in escape and evasion, McNair already had better chances of succeeding than many others, but he had also spent much of the last 14 years behind bars, visiting fellow prisoners who had either escaped before or getting busted trying. As McNair himself put in the big college of crime that prison is, he had credits in Escape 101. Thanks to that knowledge and his creative mind, McNair was soon able to find a gap in Pollock's security. As he worked in the manufacturing area of the facility, repairing torn mail bags and watching them being shipped back to the US Postal Service, McNair came up with an insane idea. What if he could literally be shipped out of prison? From the assistant factory manager, McNair learned that the unrepaired mail bags were sent to a warehouse to be stored before they were then returned to the prison factory to be sorted and repaired. The bags needed to be stacked on pallets and shrink wrapped, which was a bit of a problem, but most importantly, the bags would be stored for a certain amount of time in an unsecured area. That is where McNair needed to get himself. Trying to hide his actions from fellow inmates the best he could, McNair began to build what he called an escape pod. It was literally a mailbag pallet with a hiding spot that was supported by a frame and metal tubes held together by zip ties. Fellow prisoners would later say that they could tell McNair was working on something, but nobody could have guessed he was about to ship himself to freedom. On April 5th, 2006, McNair, who had tied supplies to his stomach, crawled into his escape capsule through a tiny entrance on the side. McNair then covered the hole with a cardboard panel wrapped in a mailbag and shrink wrap and inserted a small straw through the bottom of the pallet so he could breathe. The tight compartment under the mailbags was like a sauna. Within minutes, McNair was sweating profusely. Every breath through the tube was a struggle. Fearing he was going to pass out, McNair focused on his military training and the idea of freedom and waited. At about 9:45 AM, the mailbag pallets were forklifted to a nearby warehouse outside the prison walls. Just over an hour later, during lunchtime, Richard Lee McNair cut through the shrink-wrap cocoon, exited the escape capsule and walked to freedom. The 48-year-old's accomplishment was astounding, but what happened next was equally unbelievable. As McNair was running near railroad tracks in Ball, Louisiana, hours after his escape, he was spotted by police officer Carl Brodlin. By now, it was known that the prisoner was missing from USP Pollock, so Officer Brodlin stopped McNair and asked for his identification. Introducing himself as Robert Jones, McNair told the officer he was out to have a jog and all of his belongings were at his hotel, claiming he was in town to help on a post-Katrina roofing project. Incredibly, McNair even gave a different alias, Jimmy Jones, when he was asked to repeat his name and joked about matching the description to the escape, and still Officer Brodlin let him go, apologizing for bothering McNair's run. By April 13th, Richard Lee McNair was added to the US Marshals 15 Most Wanted list as the first prisoner to escape from a federal prison since 1991. Meanwhile, McNair tainted the authorities by using the name of a warden from the North Dakota prison, Tim Schools, on an application for a cell phone. But despite having an extraordinary talent for breaking out of correctional facilities, staying on the lam still wasn't McNair's strength. On October 24th, 2007, 1.5 years after his genius escape, Richard Lee McNair was spotted driving a stolen vehicle 100 miles north of the border in Campbellton, New Brunswick. Soon after, he was captured by the RCMP and extradited back to the United States. After his recapture, McNair was transferred to ADX Florence, the maximum security prison that houses criminals like the Unabomber and drug lord El Chapo, who managed to break out from federal prison in 2001 and stay at large for over a decade. ADX Florence is designed so that inmates do not know their specific location, with the complex making it impossible to plan an escape. There is no doubt Richard Lee McNair had earned his place inside. What do you guys think of Richard Lee McNair? Do let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section below. That brings us to the end of today's video. As always, please do smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more prison escapes. Thank you, and I'll see you all next time. Take care. Peace.